3, 2, 1. Welcome back to the Back Chat with the Back Doctor, and with me today I have our special guest, Dr. Angus. And Dr. Angus, today's episode is all about raising healthier kids, the foundations of lifelong wellness. So welcome.
Thank you.
Basically, today is all about, I think we did an episode on kids last year. No, actually 2 years ago, December. Yeah.
Is it 2 years?
2 years.
Oh, we've seen a lot of kids since then in practice.
A lot of kids. So I thought it would be a good time to revisit, invigorate, reconnect in the sense of let's talk about kids, what we've seen over the years, the trends that have been changing.
Sure.
And, you know, one of the things that have stood out to me is the awareness from parents around kids' health and how important it is to have a more healthier lifestyle, a more proactive lifestyle. Something that stood out to me probably the most this year.
Okay. Well, I guess a lot of the stresses that kids face these days are unknown quantities and new, so it's taken time for parents to catch up and get with the program, so to speak. So yeah, even in the space of 2 years, I think people's perceptions and attitudes to things are different.
Massive. And what do you think is the biggest health challenges that kids face today?
By far, screens. Not just posture, not just screen time, but also the dopamine addiction that unfortunately kids are getting etched into their nervous system in that developmental time of their life.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you've hit me with three different things, right? Screens, dopamine addiction, as well as posture.
Yeah.
So let's unpack all of those together. Let's start with just screens themselves. Yeah. What are we finding?
So screens in themselves aren't bad, but the position that kids adopt when they are watching screens tends to be very poor. There's very little adult awareness around posture and how to use a chair properly, how to use a couch or a beanbag to the best effect. Because let's face it, we're not always going to get the kids onto, a dining room chair or a lounge chair. So posture's by far the biggest thing. When you compound that with the school bags, you've seen some of the school bags that the kids come in with?
Yep.
Absolutely horrendous. We're talking tens of kilos. Okay, they've got all the books and the laptop and food for the day and water, change of kit, all in one bag. And some of these kids are only weighing 20, 25 kilos themselves. The bag's just as big and heavy.
I know, I was going to say some bag sizes are completely large, some are way too small for what's packed in there too. So
yeah,
compared to the kid sizes as well, you got to weigh the weight balance and the ratio and all of that together.
That's right. So posture's by far one of the worst aspects. But as I mentioned, that dopamine addiction, that TikTok effect that kids get from using screens, even if it's the most banal, 1 or 2 year old in a pram squashing bugs or moving things around, just that instant gratification. Kids get very addicted to that because it's fun, it's easy.
So let's break down dopamine in a bit more detail, because we've all heard what dopamine is. But for the parents that really want to understand a bit more about what dopamine is, like what type of chemical being released in the brain is that? Could you go a bit deeper into that as well, Doc?
Well, dopamine is an essential part of our neurobiology, and I'm not going to break it down too far, but it's more important to understand the effects of that. And the effect basically is that kids' attention span shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. So you only have to watch the movies these days that are aimed at kids compared to the stories that were aimed at kids 10, 20, 50 years ago, and you see an exponential shortening of people's attention span, and therefore movies that are more and more crash bang, pop, whiz bang.
You talk about shorter attention spans. I actually want to delve deeper into this, if that's okay. One of the things that stand out to me the most right now with the dopamine, the short attention span, is literally, I just came back from a baby expo, okay? And one of the things that stood out to me was this toy manufacturer, that there was a stall there, and the toys that they had were all creative. They were all challenging toys for younger kids. There was not like a car that you can just drive. It was you had to put the car together. You make the car with the toys. You can make a ship out of the toys. You can make a rocket ship. You can make a boat. You can play around and create different shapes and positions. And when I spoke to them, his whole philosophy around it was kids need to be challenged. Kids need to be learning and growing.
That's right.
But now, like you said, this instant gratification, the TikTok effect.
Easier and easier.
Dopamine is literally gratification. It's the chemical that gives you gratification. Simple. But the way we were geared to have dopamine was we work hard at something. We work hard, we challenge ourselves, we push through the struggle, and then you get to the goal, then you get your dopamine. That's literally how we're geared. But now, you don't have to work hard. It's instant gratification. So now what's happening with kids, there's no more willing to do things. There's no more willing to challenge themselves because they're not growing into that. Sorry, I'm going to go freaking hard on this, but
I agree.
Kids are not willing to be challenged. As soon as you put them something, a struggle, they're going to complain, they're going to cry, depending on the age, of course. If they're not vocal yet, they're going to be crying a lot more. Right? They're going to not be engaging. They're not going to be aware of their surroundings. They're just going to be focused in one thing rather than being curious about the world around them, the nature, the looks, the sounds that they're hearing. They're just going to be zoomed in.
How can you improve? How can you better? How can you get to that outcome that you're looking to achieve and be creative in that means?
Massive. It is massive. So I will put a stop there just in regards to the dopamine, but this is something that we can always unpack in more detail. But it's such a big thing.
It is. It's character deconstructing as opposed to character building.
No. And, why is it so important for parents to look after their kids' health such at an early time rather than wait till later?
Particularly the first 8 years of life. That's when the nervous system is literally being pieced together and built and programmed. So it's the infrastructure of what that person is then going to carry through their life eternally. So if they're developing poor neurological circuits and habits at a young age, then don't be surprised if that continues into teenagehood, problems, inability to concentrate, focus, study, get work, get jobs and succeed.
From one of my most recent seminars, you may have not known this as well, but do you know what differentiates our brain development the most from every other animal in the planet?
Talk it to me.
So we talk about movement in the spine, right? Movement in the spine is what really creates our brain activity to grow and increase from a baby. It's what allows us to develop a brain. So we've got the neck strengthening, developing a nice cervical curvature.
Right.
But
Tummy time.
Yeah. But what takes that to the next level is lateral movement. Lateral movement. So side to side movement. Every other animal in the planet doesn't have good lateral movement. Doesn't have sophisticated lateral movement, side to side. Think about it. Tigers, right? Elephants, dogs, cats, all forward and backwards, right? Minimal. If they're going to go to the side, they're going to the side by moving forward and sideways.
Right.
But human beings, we have amazing lateral movement.
Okay.
That's what allows our brains to grow even more sophisticated and larger.
Yeah, it's connecting that left and right brain hemisphericity together. Yeah.
So now that we've, technology and screens and kids being less active, they're having less development in lateral movement, which is going to start to affect their growth. It's affecting how well their brain functions, how much they learn. So we're going to go into learning difficulties, struggling at school, right? Less IQ if you do an IQ test, right? Behavioral issues. Massive. Stress.
I don't think we realise how much stress kids are under these days just from those kind of things. Just that constant. It's not when they're on the screens. It's not when they are getting that dopamine fix. It's the hangover, if you will. It's the effect that their brain then goes through life needing to be satiated from second to second. And if you can't get that satisfaction, your body's stressed. It's in a state of stress.
It's literally addiction, as you said, addiction.
Yeah, chemical addiction.
So what would be some really good tips for parents in regards to, let's say screens and using the screens? What are some really good strategies around there?
Well, one of the things that kids are desperately missing these days is exercise. I'm sure a lot of people can recall the day when kids just went out into the streets and played and rough and tumbled and climbed trees and ran around, you know, for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Yep.
Especially on the weekends.
Playing football all the time.
That's it. You know, amusing yourself in creative but active and physical ways. So without that stress that is manifest through screens and everything else these days, doesn't have any way of dissipating and of getting regulated by the parasympathetic nervous system. So exercise. So certainly from a parent's perspective, we need to be really, well, two things. We need to be creative. We need to figure out what little Johnny or little Jane likes and is up to. And you know what, that's going to change a few weeks, a few months down the track. We're going to have to be on our toes and keep chopping and changing it. But as parents, it's our responsibility to look for and find out and discover what it is that motivates our kids and see how we can encourage them into doing activities that that they enjoy. It might be collecting shells on the seashore. You know, at least they're out there doing a beach walk.
Yeah. I've been reading a book, you know, daily tips for dads.
Yeah.
And one of the amazing quotes, as soon as you open up that book, says, if you're expecting to be a parent and expect it to be easy, and all you need to do is feed them, clothe them, take them to school, sorry to say, that's not a parent, that's just being a carer.
Yeah.
Right? To be a parent is literally to grow alongside them, be there for them, energy, support. It's literally like a full-time job.
Absolutely. And that brings me to point number 2, which is, as well as exercise, parents need to be an example. It's absolutely zero use telling little Johnny, telling little Jane what to do and how to do it. They learn through watching adults. They watch through learn through watching elders. So we've got to be upping our game as parents. We've got to be walking the talk, and we've got to be exercising. We've got to be reducing our screen time. We've got to be regulating ourselves in certain ways, because they absorb it. They don't even have to see it or hear it from our mouths. They are programmed to absorb and learn just by copying us.
I love it. And you know, the more disciplined you are, the more structure you have, the kids will see that structure and follow the exact same structure.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
You don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate. So, big one. And, you know, we said more exercise, more movement. What about just like good lifestyle? You know, when we talk about lifestyle for kids, we talked about the physical aspects.
Yeah.
We talked about a bit of the chemical aspects, right? Like the chemical reactions that the kids have. But what about in terms of what goes in the kids', you know, mouths, what they're drinking, food, nutrition, diet? You know, what are some good? First of all, let's recognize what's dangerous and what's not really healthy for kids, and then let's talk a bit about what's healthy.
Yeah. So, massive topic. And where we've spoken so far about the mental stress of gaming and the physical stress of backpacks and gaming. But yeah, chemical stress or nutritional stress is massive. The fact is, our food these days does not contain the nutrients that we need to build a body from. There's something called the innate diet, which is what, genetically speaking, you and I and everybody on the planet here were designed to require to build a healthy body from, and sadly very, very few people get that these days. So an innate diet does not include the carbs that we consume in large amounts. If you break down your kids' diet, you'll probably find that 60, 70, 80% or even higher of that diet is carbs. Probably been through a factory as well, rather than straight out in the field. And we're not designed to be loaded with and working from such a high carbohydrate, high sugar diet. We burn out very, very quickly and get diseased very, very quickly on the back of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, meat, vegetables, fruits, nuts. That's where it's at, with as minimal amounts of the carbs as possible.
Yeah. Because one of the things that people will tell us is like, it's a lot easier. As a parent, I'm busy. I'm working.
Yeah.
Partner's working. Kids, we just got to get them, fed as well as possible.
Quieting down. Yeah.
And it's definitely a struggle. It's definitely a struggle from the parents I've talked to. I'm about to be experiencing how this is going to change my life when my bub comes along. But that's why I have you here, Dr. Angus. You've got two.
Yeah. An 8 and a 12-year-old. You keep me very, very, very busy.
How do you guys navigate and plan and prepare? Just so, it might suit some people. They'll hear some good tips.
Yeah. So first of all, we need to educate ourselves as parents as to what an innate diet is and what things we should be excluding, where all the toxins lie that we need to be excluding, where all the good foods are that we need to be introducing. So we need to be shifting the whole family diet over to a healthier way of being. Now, truth is, we can be as healthy as we like, but as soon as kids start to grow up and go out to Macca's with their mates and start feeding themselves in the early years of adulthood, etc., let's face it, their diet's going to go to poop, okay? It's going to go downhill. But we have to bear in mind that what we've taught them as a child is their default. That's what they know as the set point, as the standard. So they stand a much, much bigger chance and an easier journey back towards then spending the rest of their adult life eating a healthy diet, if we've actually helped them, encouraged them earlier on in life.
I love that. That's so good. I actually didn't think of it that way, because literally what we teach kids is really what reflects them into their future lives and how they grow and how they mature and how they think, their baseline, their default. So that's like, even when it comes to parents that come into practice here and bring their kids in, kids that are getting chiropractic care, for example, they're always getting healthier, they're getting less sick, they're getting stronger, and they have less injuries and less falls, and if there ever is a problem, they bounce back so much quicker.
Of course.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's instilled in kids at a younger age about just a healthier lifestyle.
That's it, make it their default setting. I mean, a couple of strategies we use in our house, just from doing this, from having a healthy diet within the family from an early age, that's all they know. That's all they know. One of the kids, or is it both of them, haven't ever been to McDonald's, don't want to. In fact, they'll do everything they can to stay away from it, just from what we've said. Is it a bad thing? Of course not. They can still socialise with their mates everywhere else. But
I'll still remember when I was a baby and my parents shared the story with me. They used to take me to McDonald's to force me to have a cheeseburger. I wouldn't want to eat a cheeseburger, right? Because apparently I was a very picky eater. And
or maybe it was your instinct talking to you, saying, I don't need that.
Yeah, and then eventually I started having the cheeseburgers when I was a younger kid. And I was like, why did I have to have that cheeseburger?
So a couple of good tips in terms of getting good nutrients to our kids. As I said, food these days does not contain the nutrients. It's just factory farm produced these days. It's vacuous. It does not contain, not even the meat contains the essential fatty acids that we need these days. So actually we do need supplements to even have the most basic average level of health these days. And we make one of the kids at home the vitamin monitor, vitamin in charge of. So at the start of every meal, he's counting it out, feels very responsible, very big boy, counting everything out and putting everybody's vitamins next to their plate. So giving them some responsibility is really good. Secondarily, what is in the house is going to get eaten. Oh my goodness, they're like locusts. Anything that's on the top cupboard, right at the top shelf, right at the back, they're going to find it and eat it. So whatever garbage you buy is going to get consumed by them. Their appetites, particularly young boys, do get bigger. So buy good stuff, fill the house with healthy snacks, and obviously
they will still eat those healthy snacks.
They will eat the healthy snacks. Also, if you do manage to get kids into vegetables early, then veggie sticks are really good. You can put a whole pile of vegetable sticks on a plate, and a lot of kids will just munch their way through.
That's great.
And if you leave that, particularly at hungry time, on an hour or so before dinner, you can chop up those veggie sticks and leave them on the corner for the meal. And you might find that most of those veggies have disappeared by the time mealtime arrives.
I love it. I love it.
So, yeah.
And I want to actually move on to one of the most overlooked parts around health for kids is sleep.
Yeah.
Sleeping.
Yes.
So one of the things that we know is that kids aren't getting enough sleep anymore.
Yeah.
They're waking up way too early. They're sleeping way too late. They're not getting the proper circadian rhythm. So I want to ask you a bit more about that.
Sleep. My goodness. Needs to be dark. None of these situations are perfect, but make the room as dark as possible. Number 2, make the room as quiet as possible. Okay, they're increasingly finding that noise and sound is a stress. Again, back from the days when we all lived in caves, and even the merest rustling and a sound was something that needed responding to, and cortisol squirting into our bloodstream needs to be quiet. So anything that we can do to suppress noise in and around the home. A good pillow, a good mattress. Okay, pillows and mattresses, particularly for kids, should last a long time. So particularly with the pillow, push the boat out and get something that really holds their neck in a neutral position, and teach them actually how to use a pillow. Don't just presume that because they're on the bed they're doing the right thing. You have to teach them to lie on their side, on a pillow, or on their back without a pillow.
Massive. And one of the things that I'll preface to all the parents is that when you sleep, this applies for parents and for kids, when you sleep your body's still working. It's just working an entirely different system compared to when you're awake. So that's why it's so important that you don't neglect sleep, both for parents and for kids here. Because technically, if you can get to bed at 9 o'clock, same time as your kids, get to bed at 9 o'clock, same time as your kids. Just make it happen, right?
Yeah.
Is that going to happen? I don't know. Babies, I hear that when they say sleep like a baby, you go, you don't want that actually. You don't want that. Where'd that expression come from?
Yeah.
So
sleeping like a baby when it sleeps. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all things, we have to have a standard. We have to have something that we're aiming for. Acknowledge that a lot of the times, and some of the times, we're not going to make it dark. We're not going to make it perfectly quiet. The other really important thing with sleep is routine, is getting to bed and rising as close to exactly the same time each day. That's what our body was built for, that's what it's designed for, that's the way it can make the best use of sleep, and kids are easier to manage as well, just like babies are when you've got a routine. Kids as they grow up into teenagers are easier to manage that way as well.
Beautiful. I think that's pretty much everything, Dr. Angus. Did you have any last closing comments that you'd like to make for this episode?
Yeah. Focus on those kids' screen times. See if we can reduce it where we can. Just an action item list if I can.
Yeah, of course.
So reducing the screen times, changing the position, the posture that kids are in when they're on screen time. If we can do 50% in a chair, 50% lying on your belly, particularly for the small kids, they find that comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Putting ourselves into extension, that's far less damaging than all this flexion. Yeah. Okay.
Prawn position.
The prawn position. That's it. Minimise the weight of the backpack. Make sure, you might even want to get a chiropractor or somebody else to check that the backpack is the right size, in the right place, stacked in the right way. Get the kids' spine checked regularly. If they've no problems, then get them checked every couple of months. Make sure that we catch those small problems early and get onto it. And if they do have problems, then let's iron it out sooner rather than later.
And one of the good things, like you talked about, healthy habits that you teach kids early on is be preventative rather than reactive.
There we go. Cheaper, less dangerous. Otherwise you have to go down medical routes, which is expensive, and side effects and confusion. And
massive.
Yeah. So develop health rather than battling disease. It's a choice.
I love it.
Yeah.
So good. All right, Doc, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Great episode.
All righty.
Thank you.